Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Retrospectives-Be-Damned. Here I have my son Jack. He's with me. This is episode 26, Making of an Episode. So I'm going to basically walk you through, almost documentary style, of what it's like to make a typical episode of Retrospectives-Be-Damned. And lately, ever since this little guy has became into our lives, this is pretty typical. Is that on a weekday while my wife is at work, anything that I could work on that doesn't involve filming, so things involving writing or anything like that, that's what I do during this time. We're in that stage right now. We're in what you would call pre-production, or development rather, where I'm just developing the story idea. And so let's take it away, huh? So, a few things for you guys to see. This is pretty much that's my son laughing. This is pretty much the beginning of an outline. So I know that this is episode 26, making of an episode. Typically what I do is, and here you guys are going to get like a preview of some of the stuff I'm doing, but typically what I do is I have a future episodes file where I outline what the next 4 episodes are going to be. In this case, I'm thinking of spanning it across 2020 and 2021. Because I'm taking more time now with these videos rather than before, where I'd give myself 3 months to do everything. So here's making of an episode. The topic is going to be PlayStation's 25th anniversary and PS2's 20th anniversary. Typically, what I do is here for future ideas, I just write down a bunch of ideas. And so even here, I have an idea when I hit episode 100 and the show. I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen. These are just random ideas I write down. And what I do is I pick an idea that, either... See, here I have any anniversaries. So if there's an anniversary that's going on, I'm going to cover it if I haven't covered it yet. So I haven't talked about the PlayStation at all in any episode, nor the PS2. Usually, for example, when PS1 turns 30, I'm probably not going to cover it again, because I will have covered all my launch memories and whatnot here for the 25th anniversary. Same thing for PS2. When 25th hits for that, I'm not going to cover it again. So typically, if there's any anniversaries, I cover that first, and then, if I feel it's something I could talk about, and then any other topics, I just write down here. So I have, Resident Evil 4, toy collecting, movie trailers, stuff like that are ready to go. So pretty much all I have to do is start outlining the episode at this point, which is, fairly straightforward. Hey everyone, so today it's a Friday. Which means that my wife is home. She actually works from Friday. At home on Fridays, but it's still a pretty crazy day. My son, as you can see, is not here because it's a different day, but basically I have the outline done, as you can see, of what we're doing. It's pretty, full, I feel. I have this website here. This is Celtics.com. Basically, this is what I use to write my scripts. So, here I would write interior, RBD, RBD room day, or probably night, because I've been filming. Well, you know what? No, let's try to do day. I always try to do daytime because it's better lighting. And then you press enter, and then here up here you can control action, act, dialogue, whatever you want to do, and you can type it in here. Usually what I do is I write a first draft based off of this outline. So I have this outline I showed you earlier, and I do a first draft based off of this, and then after this first draft is done, if I feel confident with it, I'll show it to someone. If I feel like I could do a better rewrite, then I go back and I do a second draft, and then I usually show it to my wife, and I get her thoughts on it, just to make sure, as a quote-unquote outsider, it makes sense. But I show it to my wife, and then from there, I do some more tweaks on it, see what else I can do. And then once I have a script that I think is finalized, then, I move on to the pre-planning and stuff like that. But we'll get to that. For now, I think it's time we wrote the script, the blueprint. So let's see what I can do. Hey guys, it's been a while until I've updated. It's a lot of stuff has happened since I've updated. I've been working slowly but surely on the script. But what I have in my hands is the completed script for the episode. Okay, so here we are. Retrospectives-Be-Damned, episode 24, PlayStation 1 and 2 Anniversaries by Chris Cortez. So what I do is I get a pen and I start making these notes. So basically I don't storyboard, but I want an idea of what I'm gonna shoot, and like I know I write stuff like cut to, but I basically read the script and in my head I imagine, okay, when are we gonna cut to something? When are we gonna, show whatever? And so, here I know what's in brackets. So from basically this line is all gonna be one shot. So I wrote 1S. Sometimes I'll write 2S or 3S or all shot. And basically the number is actually to indicate that, because the S is, hey, this is a shot. But the 1 indicates how many people are in the shot. So if this was a scene between 2 people, I actually write 2 shot. But in the case of this script, I'm the only actor in it. It's all 1 shot. But when it comes to VO, voiceover stuff, I don't really, outline it or anything like that. Because, I write something like images related to PS2, and then I'm talking about PlayStation 2 for a very long time, as you can see. And based on what I'm saying, I will, put stuff appropriate to my lines. So, I don't know where this stain came from. I think it's like a grease stain from my son when I put the paper down. But anyway, and then we end on, 1 shot. So I have to say all this line, which, this entire line, which will be a pain in the ass. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much what I do. So the script is done. It's all outlined. Next up is actually to start recording the voiceover. All right, guys. So every single movie, let me lower the brightness here, that I have edited together, I think it's better here. Every single episode of RBD, with the exception of the first episode, which was done on Final Cut Express, and my wife helped me cut it together since it was the first episode. But all the other episodes, 2 through 25 and now 26, have been done via Final Cut. I'm sorry, not Final Cut. iMovie. I love iMovie. I think iMovie is delightful. It works out really well for me. What I do is I create like this is like the bare basics, like just so I have something. But basically, I give myself a timeline here of what I consider the scenes of the episode. Scene 1 is the intro, where I say what we're talking about. In this case, it's going to be PS1 and 2. Scene 2 is me talking about the PS1. Scene 3 is me transitioning to the PS2. Scene 4 is me talking about the PS2. And then scene 5 is the conclusion. So scene 5 is going to be filmed. 4 is VO. 3 is filmed. 2 is VO. And 1 is filmed. So the first thing I always do is I record all of the dialogue. Right now, at this point of production, the first thing I always do is I record the voiceover. The mic, I use a few microphones, but the microphone I'm using for today's episode, this is a Astro Gaming headset. So you just kind of like wear it as such. And then you have the microphone here, and it records fairly well. It's excellent for doing the Chris's collection that I do, because I have my computer here, my TV is right in front of the camera, and or I guess in back of the camera rather, and so I could record and not have to worry about going like this with the microphone. We do have another microphone. It's one of those like USB basic microphones that I think some people use it for ASMR. But anyway, so I use those as well, occasionally. And uh, yeah, it all depends. Sometimes I even record on GarageBand. When I did the voice of the other RBD guy, the echoey effect, that was all from GarageBand. That while I was acting, I was actually recording my voice in it. But for this episode, we're just doing clean vocals throughout the whole thing. So I'm just gonna use the dub recording thing that's within iMovie, and I have my script here so I can go through. Usually I just do about 30 minutes worth of work, and I don't want to like strain my voice too much, and plus that's really all the time I have most of the time. Right now it's 8 o'clock at night. My wife is upstairs with our son. He's kind of not wanting to sleep today, so she's buying me some time, so to say. And I do the same for her. She does live streams and things like that, within the book community, which you guys should check her out, Rebecca K. Sampson. And so, I'll do the same. I'll watch him downstairs. But anyway, and I have my water, of course, which, gotta have refreshment for when you're doing stuff. But without further ado, let's get into it. I got my PlayStation a few years after it came out. Already don't like it. I got my PlayStation a few years after it came out. I had seen it briefly at my friend Gabe's house, since his brother had owned one, but I didn't really care much of it. It wasn't until a few years later, around 1998, that my friend Alex showed me his brother's PlayStation. He showed me 2 games that not only made me want to buy a PlayStation, but changed the way I saw video games. I got my PlayStation a few years after it came out. I had seen it briefly at my friend Gabe's house, since his brother had owned one, but I didn't really care much of it. It wasn't until a few years later, around 1998, that my friend Alex showed me his brother's PlayStation. He showed me 2 games that not only made me want to buy a PlayStation, but changed the way I saw video games. Alright, so we're going to stop it there. But you see the first take, it was really just me reading. It was a cold read, so there wasn't really much there. But having, after I read it the first time, I'm like, oh, okay, I have an idea of like the certain beats I want to hit and stuff like that. And the second take, I think it's pretty good. I like it. Obviously, when I'm re-watching the video, I might redub it because maybe I thought, oh, well, the way I delivered the line live action before this doesn't really sound that right, or it doesn't really blend in right, so let me re-record the beginning or something like that. But so this is pretty much the voiceover part. Sometimes I have guest stars, like my sister once, and my wife has appeared in it. And when I do guest stars, usually I still record my lines first, just to get, an idea. And then, I have it there for them, so that while they're doing the VO, they could hear my side to have something to, like, act in front of. And rather than, I think usually I record them after the fact. So I'll do my voice first, then we'll film the stuff, and then they'll come in at the end to record their stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much the video part of it. I mean, the audio part of it, not the video part. Now I'm ready to shoot the live action stuff. Here, normally for RBD Guy, I always wear a graphic tee. In this case, I'm wearing Super Mario World, and I always wear a necktie. And I used to have long hair. I actually just got a haircut, but so that's why I'm shooting it today, because I'm all nicely trimmed and all that. RBD Guy usually has a beard, so I try to keep... I mean, I always have a beard, but, it's something that I try to keep. I used to have long hair. We did that transition episode where I think it was like the season finale of 5. I wore my wig, so I had long hair, but then
when we started the next season, his hair got shorter, and now this is actually the shortest it's ever been. So it's always nice to have the wig just in case I ever want to bring it back for like a flashback or just to wear. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so anyway, this is my outfit essentially. I'll show you guys what I have set up in the background right now in a sec. So these are lights, filming lights. I bought a green screen kit when I filmed The French Assassin with a Bad Comb Over. So I actually just shot a scene where I was sitting here. There's the script, and there's my dog mustache. And there's actually the green screen that all this came with. But yeah, I set up the lights and I plugged them here. The house is a mess, FYI. My son made a huge mess here. But yeah, these lights provide a lot better lighting for the scenes and, you know, just make the shots look a lot better. It is nighttime, and I hate filming at night. I usually like filming in the daytime for the live action shots, but lately, ever since we had our son, this is just how it's been, how we're able to film the RBD episodes. But the lighting has really helped with this episode. This is actually the first episode we're doing with the lighting equipment. And then over here, this is the camera tripod. This is actually the first episode I'm shooting in 4K. So I can't set up the camera right now because I'm using it to film this. But basically, my iPhone goes in here. And then you'll see this is probably what the shot is going to look like, more or less. And I had to rearrange the lighting, of course. But we just shot, there's 4 shots I had to do. 2 are here and 2 are in front of here. So, of course, I shoot first the scenes here because I have everything set up. And then once I'm done doing the shots here, I will move my lighting equipment over here. Because it would be, even though they're separate shots, like the first and last shot are here. And then the 2 middle shots are here. But it would be ridiculous to shoot this, move everything over here, shoot this, move it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense to do that. So I do everything here, and then I move everything here. This is actually a pretty light shoot day. There's only 4 shots, so everything will be done today. Sometimes when I have guest stars, we have to shoot across multiple days, or if my wife is involved, you know, I have to shoot with her. But yeah, that's pretty much it with filming a live action aspect of the episode anyway. Finally, I have done the video portion of everything. So if you see here in the timeline, everything has a video clip. The audio now has, you know, something that corresponds to what I'm talking about. I use a combination of a lot of stuff. I use pictures, video clips, and of course, you know, me talking and whatnot. But yeah, so now the next step is, because it's just me talking with video clips, and I might be a little bit bored, so the next step is to add some audio, and to, or not audio, sorry, some music. And that's it. I am done with the the music part, so all of the audio is done. I use a mixture of a lot of stuff. Sometimes I use actually theme park music. Sometimes I use royalty-free music. Sometimes it's stuff that's related to you know, whatever game that we're talking about. Like here, Metal Gear, I used The Best Is Yet to Come. You know, Resident Evil 2, I used a Resident Evil 2 song. So it's just, you know, things like that that's mixed in all the way to the end of the thing. And there you go. That is the end of what I do when I'm making an episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, you know, behind the scenes segment. This is, like I said earlier, something that I've been wanting to do for the longest time, and I'm so happy I was able to do it finally. Now that we're all done, let's sit back and enjoy episode the edited part, I guess, not the behind the scenes part, of episode 26 of Retrospectives-Be-Damned. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode, year, and decade of Retrospectives-Be-Damned. This year, we're going to take things slow, like I mentioned last time, and let the episodes come out as they please. For today's episode, I wanted to cover 2 major console anniversaries that are happening this year. 2020 marks the 25th anniversary of the PlayStation in North America, and the 20th anniversary of the PlayStation 2. So you know what that means. More personal stories. So let's get crack-a-lackin'. I got my PlayStation a few years after it came out. I had seen it briefly at my friend Gabe's house since his brother had owned one, but I didn't really care much of it. It wasn't until a few years later, around 1998, that my friend Alex showed me his brother's PlayStation. He showed me 2 games that not only made me want to buy a PlayStation, but changed the way I saw video games. The first was Final Fantasy VII, and the second was Resident Evil 2. Both games were just enveloped in cinematic nuances and blew me away. I had never seen a game do that. After improving my grades during the first semester of 5th grade, my parents surprised me with my very own PlayStation as an early Christmas gift. The PlayStation might be my favorite console of all time. I'm still not quite sure about that, but it's the closest console I could think of that fits the bill. The reason why? The games, of course. For this video, I wanted to narrow down my top 5 favorite games for PlayStation, and though difficult, I think I was able to narrow down the 5 games. We'll start with number 5 and work our way to the number 1 spot. Number 5 is Final Fantasy VII. As I mentioned earlier, this was one of 2 games that convinced me to buy a PlayStation. While it's not my favorite Final Fantasy, I really enjoyed it. The music, story, characters, and gameplay are just as great as it could be for a Final Fantasy. I was so glad the HD remaster came out on PS4 a few years ago, so I could have a more modern console to enjoy the game on, and with that remake coming out, the game will continue to have recognition for years to come. My number 4 is another in the Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy VIII. This was actually the first Final Fantasy I bought, and I connected so well with it. I was 12 in 1999 when it came out, and being a romantic, was really drawn into the relationship aspect of the game. It was the first video game I could remember that was first and foremost a love story, but was also a badass story of military warfare and sorceresses. It connected with me a lot in my middle school years, and Squall is just such an interesting protagonist. Being able to get inside his head and read his thoughts was a great storytelling method. My number 3 is Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. I've mentioned in a previous episode about the reasons I enjoy this game so much, and I also mentioned the story of how my friend Alex beat the game in one sitting and then came over my house the next day to prove that he did it. While the gameplay, story, and action beats in this game are so on point, the connection the game had on me and my friends is the reason I really rank this game up there. It means a lot to me, and just brings me back to my childhood every time I play it. My number 2 is Resident Evil 2. That's right, another Resident Evil game. Resident Evil 2 is actually my favorite Resident Evil game of all time. It's also the second PlayStation game I bought and was, alongside Final Fantasy VII as I mentioned above, one of the games that convinced me to get this adoring console. Like with RE3, I covered the reasons I love this game so much in an episode all about classic Resident Evil games. Episode 5, if you guys want to check it out. But, to summarize, it's a Resident Evil game that expands the universe, has so many memorable moments, and has 4 interesting campaign modes. It's a classic to me, and made me so pumped for the next installment at the time. My number 1 is also my favorite game of all time, Metal Gear Solid. I dedicated an entire episode to this game, so please check out episode 10 for my full thoughts. It'd be kinda hard for me to summarize it here. It's an amazing game that still makes me so happy to be a gamer. That pretty much sums up my thoughts on the PlayStation, so let's move on to the PlayStation 2. Unlike the PS1, I knew the PlayStation 2 was coming, but honestly, I was really satiated with the Dreamcast I got in 1999, so I wasn't too interested. Until Metal Gear Solid 2 was announced. That first trailer wowed me like no other. I remember seeing how badass Snake looked, how amazing the graphics looked, how lifelike everyone moved. I immediately started hatching a plan to get a PlayStation 2 just for this game. I convinced my parents to get a PlayStation 2 for my sister. My logic was, my sister would have her own DVD player and I could play games in her room to bond with her. They said it was okay, but only if it stayed in her room. It actually did for the longest time, but with her permission, it would stay in my room for big releases like Metal Gear Solid 2. Getting a PlayStation 2 was as hard as all the headlines back in 2000 made it sound like. Since I never pre-ordered it, I had no chance of getting one in October when it came out. Instead, my local electronics boutique, local being 40 minutes away, had this weird pre-order thing going on for their second shipment of consoles. I don't know how they did it, but we paid in advance, and when the second shipment would come in, they would call us to let us know we could come pick it up. A month later in November, I had a PlayStation 2 in my hands. At first, I had a hard time finding a game that I really enjoyed on PS2. The first game we bought for it was Dynasty Warriors 2, which was fun, but didn't really make me feel invested in it. It wasn't until a few months later that The Bouncer came out and locked me in. The Bouncer is a super underrated Square Enix game that's pretty much a cinematic beat-em-up with really well-designed characters that look like they could be from a Final Fantasy game. From that point forward, only good times would flock to my PS2 for years to come. Just as I did with the PS1, I think it would be appropriate to name my top PlayStation 2 games. So, here goes. Number 5 is Onimusha Warlords. When I first heard of this game, it was pitched as Resident Evil crossed with samurai motifs. That sounded awesome! What we got was exactly that, but instead of zombies, we fought demons. Samurai demons! The Bouncer was the first PS2 game that locked me into playing the PS2, but Onimusha was the first game that wowed me. There were other entries in the Onimusha series, but the first game just really connected to me, the same way Resident Evil 2 connected to me on PS1. They remastered the original recently, so here's hoping the other games get a remaster too. Number 4 is Final Fantasy X. My friend Gabe called me over to his house once. He said, "Hey dude, I have a demo disc for the PS2 that I got at Walmart. Come over and check it out." I headed over to Gabe's house and checked out what was on it. The game that really sucked me in was Final Fantasy X. It was the first Final Fantasy that had voice acting and expanded on its cinematic angle. On top of that, the battle system was completely reworked and kicked the most major of asses. After playing the demo, I told Gabe that I was totally getting that game. A few months later, I did. Playing through it, Final Fantasy X became my second favorite Final Fantasy game after Final Fantasy VIII. Years later, a remaster came out, and my heart felt the same excitement I did back when the original game came out in 2001. Number 3 is God of War 2. When I got back into gaming after a brief break to be in a rock band, true story, one of the first game series I checked out was God of War. At the time, only the first 2 games were out, so I picked up the first game, played it, loved it. Then I got the second game, and holy crap, was it awesome. Everything I didn't like about the first game was changed around for the better in the second game. The story was great, as was the combat. It was such a fun beat-em-up with an epic-ass story. Since then, the God of War series has flourished beautifully, but God of War 2 really hooked me into this series and showed me how much of a promising future it had. Number 2 is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Though not even close to the first MGS game I played, MGS 3 was a big step in dramatic storytelling for video games. The ending with Eva giving her monologue was the first time I remember crying during a video game. I know Aerith was a big thing in 1997, but I was too young to cry. The game itself was also masterful. It was fun, well-paced, expanded upon the series' lore, and was a perfect prequel, in that it really makes you want to revisit the previous entries with a new perspective. Metal Gear Solid 3 is an excellent game that I never get tired of playing. Number 1 is Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. As I mentioned earlier, this was the game that got me to buy a PlayStation 2, and to this day, it's still my favorite PS2 game. Though I still think MGS1 is the better game, MGS2 is a smart fucking game. It challenges the player both in gameplay and in presentation of the story. It's a game that, personally, has aged better with time. It didn't just take the safe route and make a generic sequel, but instead reinvented itself and took a risk in continuing the Metal Gear series. I think it's one of Hideo Kojima's best games, and I've yet to experience a PS2 game that has topped it. Oh man, those were two mighty consoles we just covered. The PlayStation 1 and 2 was a double win combo for Sony. Yeah, around the PS3 era they kind of did falter a bit, but with PS4 they went right back up top. And who knows, with the PlayStation 5 right around the corner, we might have another double win combo in our hands. Anyway guys, that's it for today's episode. And always remember, Retrospectives-Be-Damned, I'm telling my story.